Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. My guest today is Pete Marin, and Pete is an airbrush artist who focuses on airbrush events, where he provides entertainment and swag in the form of t-shirts and hats and all kinds of things that you could paint on. I saw something recently in his social media where he was painting on bags at Neiman Marcus for Christmas customers. And I mean, just really inventive, really creative, and what a niche he has. So it's a really cool episode delving into someone who has a journey with airbrush, has owned t-shirt shops and malls, and has developed and changed along the way to meet his needs and to meet the market where it's at too. So without further ado, here is Pete Marin.
My name is Pete Marin, originally from Maine, but I'm living in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I've been airbrushing for, I think it's been 30 years now. I started working in a mall at a kiosk. I got apprenticed from my boss. And I've been doing pretty much a jack of all trades when it comes to airbrush. Any kind of work I could do, I would do it for the first, honestly, I think I'd say like 26 years. So only in the past four years have I really focused on events, which is my main gig and my only gig. I don't do any other type of work. And that's me in a nutshell. We can dive down into some more details.
That's a sophisticated nutshell. I love it. So tell me, Pete, about that mall in Maine. Like, how did that come to be? And was that in Maine?
Yeah. Yeah, I was at the
Yeah.
Maine Mall in South Portland.
Yeah.
That was the first town I lived in after moving away from home. I actually grew up in Madawaska, Maine. And if you know where that is, we probably know the same people because it's a very small town.
That
It's
sounds
right
like
up on the
it's
border with
right at
Canada.
the top. Yeah, I was going to
Very,
say.
yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, from my mother's house, you can see Canada.
Wow.
Look across the river. So yeah, I moved down to Portland, and I was working in the mall at the time. Eddie Bauer, I was just folding shirts basically. And on my lunch breaks, I'd go watch this artist paint. He had a kiosk, and I was fascinated by that because I was always into art. I was considered the class artist, which doesn't say much because we had 60 people in my class. But so anyway, one day he had a help wanted sign up, and I thought that would be cool. If I got to work in a mall, I'd rather draw for a living than folding shirts all day. So I convinced him to teach me, and I respect it because at the time he was very cautious and maybe didn't trust me fully. He says, "I can teach you, but it's going to cost you $2,000." And I didn't bat an eyelash. I just said, "Well, as long as I can pay it off with the money I make from working with you." And he said, "Okay." It turns out he never charged me for it. That was the filter, to get the
Yeah.
serious people to apply and not just anyone who wanted to, gain some knowledge and then take off.
Can we
So
stop
if
for one
like,
second? I love
yeah,
that because I that would have scared people away. I suspect that might have, and that's why it's a filter, right? And there's a part of
exactly,
that that's almost like he Willy Wonka'd you.
exactly, exactly.
But what why do you think it didn't intimidate you?
Good question. Um, I guess I was just, I think I'm not alone with this. Those artists who watch other airbrush artists work think a lot of times to themselves like, I don't know if I could do that. It's like learning to play an instrument. You really got to dedicate yourself to it, right?
Yeah.
And when an artist approaches me with so much confidence saying, I can do that, I'm an artist, I think to myself, well, if you're a pianist, it doesn't mean you can instantly pick up the guitar and start playing. You might have a leg up, being a musician already, but you still got to put in the work. So I was fascinated by that. I thought, man, if I could do that, that would be pretty cool. Honestly, I thought a little bit like I might get some chicks that way too, because it's kind of a unique talent or whatever. I was young. So yeah, Um, no regrets, obviously. I never thought I'd be doing it for this long, though, to be honest. I thought it was just a stepping stone. And I did do other ventures. I even sold real estate, which is complete opposite. But I always come back to this, and
Yeah.
I'm in it for good now.
Yeah. Okay, so you passed his test,
Yeah.
and what was that? What were the early days like?
Yeah, man, I would practice at home. He would give me drills. His approach to teaching was a lot like mine. I'm going to give you a few lessons, and then you got to go home and practice the hell out of them and come back and see me in a week. I always tell new artists now, it's like, this is a lot like Karate Kid. If you haven't watched the movie, go watch it. Wax on, wax off. I can't teach you in one lesson. You got to put the work in. So that's what I did. I think it was about 3 months of, at least an hour a day. I was committed because I didn't want to work at Eddie Bauer anymore. And eventually one day he called me. He'd seen something I'd done. He was really, impressed by it. He's like, wow, that looks pretty good. And then one day he gave me a call. It was a Saturday. This is a good story. Saturday afternoon, he says, dude, our other guy couldn't make it today. You're ready. Come in. I'm like, oh, I'm not ready. He's like, trust me, you're ready. I think he was stuck because I really wasn't ready. But so I show up. As soon as I walk up to these, a crowd of people forms behind me. They're all going to watch the artist paint. And I'm terrified, shaking. I didn't even get through the first T-shirt. I had to walk away and compose myself. But eventually, I came back and I finished the day. I don't know if the customers were upset or not. All I know is I didn't get any returns and I made it through the day. And it just got easier from there. But that wasn't easy. And that was the beginning of the career. I think, like I said, after about 3 months of working or practicing, I would work for him, maybe 4 days a week, 5 days a week. It was a full-time job for me, and it's been a full-time job ever since.
So I look back at my work when I started, and I remember thinking you kind of get to a level, and it's interesting that you said 3 months because I I experienced a similar timeline, 3 months to kind of get your hand around the tool if you're working with it every day.
Hmm.
And it's not just the active airbrushing, it's everything that comes with it. Like, is there humidity in the line?
Hmm.
Are your paints thin enough?
So true.
Getting used to constantly cleaning off the needle, and then all the other things. It's a really it's a complicated partner in your work.
Yeah.
And you have to understand it, and then there's the feel and the flow, right? As you're working. And probably we all start from a different position of what we might excel at. Like, I didn't excel at lettering, um, and I would say I still don't excel at that. I'm okay, but I'm good at painting characters, and I'm good at cartoons and whatnot. But it took about 3 months to get to that point, and I thought I was good. Now, I wouldn't have said to you I'm the best in the world, but I thought I was good. And then
Hmm.
I would say it was another 3 years to really get to a place where I felt like I had command over the tool, and then command over a variety of different subjects to work on. How do
Hmm.
you relate to that? And
Yeah, it's
particularly
true.
lettering was about 3 years, I'd say.
I I always tell people that lettering is like the last frontier, and those who have it down pat in short order, I admire a lot. Took me years too. I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, I think I'm probably better than average, but nowhere near the top when it comes to that. And I've been doing it for 30 years. You know what
yeah,
I mean? The mastery in lettering is like, whew. So I see guys who can do it in 10 years, like better lettering than me. And I'm like, wow. I always compared lettering to like a dance. You can't slow down and make it perfect. You have
right,
to flow with it.
right.
Like when you dance, you're almost letting it come through you as opposed to, directing your muscles and being precise and all that. Um, so it only comes through lots of repetition and practice and talent. Um, and as for the other things, yeah, it's so funny. I was actually really good at portraits long before I could do decent lettering. I think, and that will blow the average person away when they see the portrait. They just think you're the best artist in the world. Like, you still have a lot to learn, really. you know. Um, and I know I'm not alone like that. I see a lot of great portraits from people who can't do lettering. Um, I think lettering is underestimated as far as one of the skills to learn.
Well, they're
But
different muscles, right? They're
yeah,
definitely different muscles, and I would say one of the things that like I felt like airbrushing t-shirts was college for me in a lot of
hmm
ways. It was art college and it was sales and business college. And so I'm wondering about your thoughts on that.
yeah. Well, let's see. For the first, I would say, I think it was 10 years, maybe 15 years. I was working for someone. I started working for that artist. His name was Curtis Sweet, by the way. Curtis
Okay.
Sweet in Maine, and then eventually I worked in New Hampshire, just a short drive away, um, for a company called Airbrush Unlimited. And that was a team. It was three guys who owned that. And they had shops in Florida back in the 80s, and they did really well with it. They expanded all over the Eastern Seaboard. And then when I finally joined them, they were downsizing and expanding a different part of the business that had nothing to do with airbrush, but they were still in business together. So, I wasn't really thinking about business except for maybe this customer to artist interactions, just the sales part of it. Um, but eventually, my airbrush associate and I bought the business from Airbrush Unlimited in New Hampshire, and we owned that together for about 10 years. And that's when I started getting more serious about business. I was always I always wanted to be my own business owner ever since I was in high school. And I tried a couple of small businesses while I was in high school, and I failed miserably. I just didn't have the discipline or the discipline to do the hard things, the not so fun things that come with business. It's like 80% of what we do every day, just to keep it running. So it took a little bit of maturity for me to finally grow into that. And it was in my 30s when I owned that airbrush business for the first time. And so I learned a lot with that for sure. Um, I forget now what road we're going down. I guess the education, the college part of it. Yeah, that was my
Yeah,
college education for business. I never got any, formal studies in business or anything. And I would say to anyone who's thinking about going to business, you don't need college for that. You certainly do not. I'm a big reader, though. I read a lot. I think personal development is probably more important than learning about business, honestly, because it takes a lot of, like I said, discipline and mental attitude, positive mental attitude to keep it going. And if you can get that down pat, you can learn anything.
it's a commitment, right? I guess whatever it is you're going to do and whatever you want to do, and nobody's going to hand you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that mm, we both grew up around the same time. We were talking about this. We're about the same age, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you were hit with school and college when you were young, but I remember it was like you need to go to college, like you need to go to college. Now this wasn't my family. I'm saying like socially, culturally in America,
True.
that was the pervasive. You need to go get your degree. You need to go get your degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I I explored it a bit. I didn't know any artists. I really didn't know any artists except the guy who airbrushed t-shirts at the mall, like just like you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And um so but I had this sense, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go do this and I'm going to figure it out. And I know that my parents were behind me and they're like, yeah, you can figure it out. You can go figure it out. But I have nothing against college. I have nothing against if you go to art college or business college. I would say you've really got to weigh the cost versus the benefit, right?
Especially nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah,
Student debt is a problem. I mean, we hear about it all the time in the news. And like you said, I wouldn't say college is a bad thing. I wish I had finished mine. I didn't.
yeah.
Uh, it's ironic too. I went to art school, but it was for business music management. you know, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was floundering. I didn't finish that either. But any education is better than none. But then, I know artists who went to very expensive art schools who are working other types of jobs just to pay off their student debt. And that's why I think the personal development comes into play. Like, okay, you got the education, and why aren't you using it again? Art is still your passion, right? It might be a little bit of missing fortitude, to go after what you really want. I don't know. I
What do you
don't know
think
this.
the secret is to that? What do you think that's about with people, whether they do it or not?
Believing in themselves, having not just a passion, but planning your life, be deliberate about it, and then go after it. And this is something, honestly, like I'm talking about it now, but not until I was 40 did I get really focused. I mean, even when I owned the business in New Hampshire, you know, I didn't write stuff down. Well, I'll just get right to it. Make a plan, write it down. You know, make it the first step in physical reality is writing it down. Once you have it written down, then you can start manifesting it. And for me, that changed a lot of things. I mean, I get that from reading. Like I said, reading's a big part of what I do. I'll read business books, but I'll read as many, if not more, personal development books, and I'll get more insight from that than the business books oftentimes.
So, are you a natural reader, or was that something you had to cultivate?
Yeah, I had to cultivate it. And frankly, I still don't put my nose to a book.
Yeah,
It's all audible.
yeah.
So I'm driving and reading, I'm walking and reading, I'm exercising and reading, anything I can do along with it. Um, because time is precious. I'm always trying to conserve and, put things together.
So you got to figure out the best way to get the vegetables in, right? It's
Exactly.
like, are you going to blend it? You're going to take a healthy pill? Are you going? How are you going to do
Exactly.
it, right?
It's a good
Because
way to
you've got
put
to
it.
get it in,
Get it
yeah,
in.
and then put it to practice and take the chance to do it.
Yeah.
Who believed in you? Who believed in you when you were a young kid? Obviously, the guy who hired you, he believed in you. He gave
Good
you a
question.
chance anyway, right? He believed in you to take that chance. But usually,
Yes.
when I talk with someone who has had some experience, and I appreciate your candor just about that, trying to figure it out for about 20 years out of high school. But even though you were trying to figure it out, you were actively pursuing it, right? I mean,
Yeah. I think what I lacked was that extra component. Like, okay, I was an artist and it was fun, but then what? There's always got to be something out there that you just can't reach, at least not yet, but you're
yeah,
working towards. I didn't really have a long range plan. When I finally bought the business, it changed. Okay, now we have a business and we want to expand it. We want to grow it bigger. We want to have another store. We want whatever it is. There was always something to look forward to. But as I was working with someone or for someone as an artist, I didn't see. It doesn't mean that the potential wasn't there to have to advance. I didn't see it, and shamefully admit that I wasn't really working on my art as much as I could have. I wanted to make my airbrushing look better, but I think, and this goes out to all the airbrush artists out there, I see that you focus on a lot of different media, like is it oil or acrylic behind you?
this is acrylic, yeah.
Acrylic, your sketching is awesome. You do a lot of different things. That makes your airbrush a lot better. I've seen guys who focus on all kinds of things and they're awesome at airbrush. And I see guys who just do airbrush, and I'm one of those. I have to admit it. It's easy to stagnate. I do want to say something else too. Like one video that pops up when you go to your YouTube channel, and if there's anyone watching this one, I'd advise you go watch this one. How you made $11,000 in a month. That's a good story. You have a lot of great content, by the way, and you have
Thank
great
you.
video presence. Yeah. You said when desire meets opportunity. That kind of goes back to what I was saying about, making a plan. What's the next step? Something to reach for. It gives your life a lot of purpose, I think. Gets me out of bed in the morning. And you spoke about that. I think that's so important when in business, more than like just knowing the right thing to do, having that business mind in accounting or sales or whatever it is. It's mindset mostly. because it's mindset that drives you to learn everything else.
Yeah.
So, again, I really I want to thank you actually for putting out this type of content. There's a lack of it. Like artists get plenty of how to airbrush or how to paint this or that. No one ever speaks about the business side of it. And I mean, if we want to do it for a living, you need to know both,
You
even though
do.
it's something you may not be that passionate about. Knowing the business side of it, how to talk to customers. That was a great video, how to set up a meeting and talk to customers. I think in this industry, those skills are lacking. So you're doing a big service, and thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. That means a
Yeah.
lot. I really, really appreciate that. That's cool. Yeah, you know, I just remember when I was young, and I think you probably heard this in that video, is my dad had suggested to me, if you're going to make a living, because you're going to have to make a living, you have to do something, right?
Hmm.
It might as well be something you enjoy,
Hmm.
and so figure it out now. And I was pretty young when he told me that, and I was like, okay, it was pretty clear it was going to be art related, and then a little bit later on, my dad said to me, and it was almost, I like Norm Macdonald was a clever storyteller, right? Like really clever. And he was reading out of his book, and it was all just fiction, right? Like none of it was real what he was talking about. Did I get that right? Fiction is not real, right?
Not
Nonfiction,
real.
like when you read a bio. So he's reading all this fiction, and he's talking about how he's giving advice to a young man, and he says, "I'm giving advice to a young man that he won't listen to or understand until he's 50 or 60, because you just can't. There's something about putting in the miles and the years that you have to go through,
Yeah.
but whatever it was that my dad told me, he was looking, he was almost looking away, like it was like he's looking through me or looking into his past, and he said to me, you don't he said, I trade my time for money, son. Don't trade your time for money, trade your skill for money. And I was 15, 14, I don't know how old I was, but to me, even though I didn't really understand what it meant, it it set it set a parameter around my pursuits, in that, okay, I don't want to work hourly, and I don't want to work salaried. I want to work that if I do something for somebody, they're going to pay me for what I do.
Mhm.
And and so so hourly wage was kind of out the window for me. I just wasn't interested. And
When you get an hourly wage, you get treated like a commodity. Anyone can do it,
yeah,
right? You're just getting paid for time. When you
yeah,
have a skill, that's different. You're not as easily replaceable.
yeah.
You become more valuable to the market.
Yeah, indeed. And I love what you had said leading up to this about about not just airbrushing, but working with a paintbrush and drawing with a pencil. And I would even say this for people who work digitally.
Mhm.
I've logged a lot of digital hours working in Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and Procreate. Um, and much of what I do now is in Procreate with painting. But all of that was impacted by my airbrushing. All of it was impacted by the hours I logged working in the real world, mixing real paints. And I might add to that now, have you seen all the AI art that is out there
Oh
now?
my God, I'm worried for my job now.
So it's
Yeah,
interesting, right? Because now I see artists going on there, and they're putting all the prompts in and creating things. And I'm like,
it's amazing.
you're feeding this thing. I don't know that I want to feed it, right? Because it's learning, and it's AI, so it's way advanced from what we can think of or do or output, right? But but I I think that the physical world of painting, of airbrushing T-shirts, of something that came out of a person, is the value is going to go up, back up. It's going to go up more, because it's going to become, it's not a commodity.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if someone can watch you do it. There's a new
Yeah,
appreciation. I mean, that's what's great about airbrush. I always thought it was like 50% entertainment, 50%, actual material goods. When they watch it, they have a new appreciation for it. So that will probably never go away.
Yeah.
Lucky for us.
Yeah. Lucky for us. So talk about that a little bit with, um, going from working. How many years did you work for Kurt?
Only about first 3 years of my career. Yeah.
So you're there
And then,
3 years, and then
yeah,
you went to the unlimited airbrush guys.
Airbrush Unlimited. I want to say that was, feels like 10 or 12. And then
Okay.
I bought it from them for about 8 years. And I sold my half of the business to my a partner, and I moved down to Florida. And even still, then I was still doing the retail. I had a kiosk in a mall. I was doing work from home. Again, anything. I was a jack of all trades. I could do a mural, I could do a car, I could do even body art. Um, and then I started doing events. Slowly, someone approached me in the mall and said, "Would you do my son's bar mitzvah?" Yeah, you know. So I would dabble in events for about 10 years before I realized, like, nah, I gotta take this more seriously, because, like I said, I can create, I can do some pretty nice customs, but I don't consider myself an artist because it's not something I wake up and go, I want to create today. I want to do something awesome for me. Like, never happens.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I don't mind telling people I'm not really an artist, I'm more like a craftsman. I know my craft really well.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I'm more of a business person, and I work in the event industry. And I'm proud of that. I like it. It works for my personality, especially because I'm pretty organized. And when you're booking events, you have to be on top of your schedule and stuff like that. So that niche of airbrushing lends itself really well to my personality. Um, I kind of got off track, I think. Where were we
No,
going
no,
with
you're
this?
good.
Okay.
What I really like is the flow of okay, you're working for someone and you're really serving an apprenticeship, which that's just lost now. People, they just tell you to go to college. It's like I'd rather I'd rather apprentice under somebody who knows what they're doing, because I'm going to learn so much more actively being in there.
Absolutely.
And and frankly, a lot of teachers, they and I don't have anything against teachers. I love teachers, but a lot of them haven't done it. Like, they've gone to school to learn how to tell you how to do it, and they've had some experience in that realm, but a lot of them haven't done it.
Mhm.
And again, great things can come out of that too. But if you can get into an apprenticeship with somebody who's a professional, who's going to teach you the ropes, that's you're better off spending $100,000 on that, or $2,000.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot more
Maybe.
nuanced. You're going to get all the other things, and you get the instant feedback too. Like,
Yeah.
as a teacher, I'm sure you can attest to this. You teach, right?
I
Teach art?
I am I'm actually going to be starting to teach a high school class here
Great.
coming up, which is, I've never done it before. I'm excited about it. We're going to
Yeah.
do some beginning, but anyway, yeah, please. I have
Yeah,
taught though. Yeah, I've taught people
yeah,
to
you
airbrush.
have. And I've taught a little bit too. It's not my main focus, but I always struggled with, like, I want to create some videos on how to, right? Much harder than teaching in person, because you get the feedback from the student. I was like, okay, I said that
Right.
wrong. Let me say it again. I'll show you a different way. And then again, they do it. And it's like, okay, that needs a little more work. You don't get that feedback if you're just making a video or a book, or,
Right.
you know what I mean? Really
Right.
hard to teach.
Well,
Um,
and one of the biggest things to convey with airbrushing is the XYZ of your relationship of the
yep.
airbrush, the nozzle to the surface, right?
Yeah.
And
Big.
then you got the trigger and this along with the XYZ. And what I found when I was teaching people is I'd ask them, and I might take a time out of the class if I had 10 people. I'd say, okay, I want to try something with you guys. Take your airbrush, hold it. Can I put my hand over yours? Okay. I want you to relax now. I don't want you to drop it. I just want you to relax and just feel what I'm doing, and then watch what we come out with. And I would do some letters or loops or something. And and almost every time the person turns and goes, like
Kidding.
there's something conveyed, and it's physical, right?
Yeah.
Because airbrushing is very physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like leading a partner in a
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah. It's like tango. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tango with you.
Yeah. Have you ever tangoed before? Have you ever taken a class or anything? I took a tango
No.
class years
I
ago.
would
And it
I
was cool. It was really
I bet.
cool. And it's if you're the guy partner and you're leading the lady, you're kind of your cues to her are on the hand on her back.
Really?
And and I believe me, I spent it was a very short amount of time, so I know nothing about it. I just remember them telling me that, and I wish almost wish somebody could have gotten behind me and three of us
Right?
could have been dancing, so they could have been pressing on my hand to say this is how you want to communicate. and and
I
it's
didn't know that.
subtle. It's like it's something that you couldn't really read in a you could actually could write it down, but then to convey it, it helps to be there in person.
Sure. To feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy. I never knew that about tango.
Right.
Mm,
It's crazy. It's crazy. And so I think, if you're a sleuth and a student and a detective about what you're going after, you're going to have a much a much better opportunity to excel at your craft, right?
right.
So what was it like, that first bar mitzvah, that first event? Tell me, like, how what went through your head? How did you prep for it? Because it's your first time, right? You got to get your airbrush equipment out there. You got to have an air
Right.
source. You got to have your paints. You got to, like, did you come up with designs ahead of time? How did you package it?
Um, well, I guess over the years it's gotten a lot smaller and simpler.
Okay.
And that's, I guess it's okay. With my first event, I didn't want to miss anything. I just want to make sure I had everything I needed, and without really knowing how the standard was or what customers might expect from me, I provided, as much as I could. Um, and after doing a few of them, I didn't like it at first, to be honest with you. It was a whole lot of work, and because you're working on a schedule, you have to be there on time and you have to start on time, all this stuff. So it's very nerve wracking. So after a few of those, I realized this isn't going to work unless I start to simplify, downsize, not to take away extra services from the client, but just make everything run a lot smoother for everybody. Keeping that line moving at an event is so important, and it's a lot different than retail. Retail people expect to wait a little bit for their artwork, and they want it just right. When you're working at an event, it's more about, I think, the performance, the smile, the engagement, and quick, simple. You know what I mean? They're not expecting the world because the guest who approaches the table is getting it for free. Of course, they're gonna love it.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this job too. Is like everyone treats me with so much respect and appreciation because they're getting something for free. And if the client sees that the guests are having a good time, they're having a good time. So that makes my job super easy compared to retail. We're always trying to match the customer's expectations, and everyone has different expectations. So you always have to perform at your best as far as the composition of your artwork and whatnot. So yeah, over the years, my equipment's gotten smaller, lighter, stronger, better. The designs have become less and simpler. I mean, I only do name designs with different backgrounds, 12 of them. I never change the samples because everywhere I go, it's different people. To them, it's new. To me, it's it's 10 years old. Been painting the same samples for 10 years, more or less. So that's how it's evolved. And I think I got it pretty down pat now. I have equipment that I can throw in an airplane um, without TSA problems. And we do fly a lot, go all over the country. I have equipment for all my team. So everyone's equipment looks the same, works the same. We all use the same samples, the same paint, the same colors, same outfit, trying to keep some, not brand uniformity, but uniformity among the
Yeah.
team so we look more cohesive, which is great when a corporate client hires us and we have 5 artists at the event. Um, yeah, so that's how it's evolved. So it's gotten a lot more rewarding and a lot more fun. I don't have to stress out because all those kinks have been worked out. But it took 10 years. I'm still ironing out some of the details, but for the most part, it's pretty much where I want it. Now I'm focusing more on marketing,
Okay.
getting out there, having people know us.
So do you have a key team, and then do you have agents that you use, or do you just work with different agencies?
Hmm. Yeah, we work with different agencies, but yeah, we do have some that come back over and over again. For example, we have a college agency. She books nothing but colleges for us, and she does so many that she's my exclusive agent. Like I promised that I would never work with another college agency. I'm happy
Wow.
to do it because, like I said, it's probably a third of our business, which is huge. Um, and yeah, every once in a while, I'll get new agencies that call me from the website. Um, but a lot of times we work with repeat business, even repeat customers. Um, if you do one birthday party or one bar mitzvah for a mom, you're probably going to do other two kids too. You know what I mean? So
Right,
they end up
right.
coming around. And
And then everybody else who's there, the word spreads, right?
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, especially in the bar mitzvah community, they're a pretty tight knit group,
yeah.
and they're always trying to outdo each other with their parties.
Which is good. It's good for
Yeah, it's great
business,
for
right?
us. Yeah, yeah,
So, airbrushing t-shirts at a mall is a different creature
yeah,
than
absolutely.
doing. How do you figure out the value for an event? Like, is it a per shirt? Is it an hourly? Is it just an event
Hmm. Yeah,
price?
that was tough for me. There was really no one to speak of. I mean, the only way I could figure I could get the insight on what the others were doing, the industry standard was to call and pretend I was a customer and try to get a quote. I never did
Yeah,
that because I just
yeah.
couldn't get around that, right? Didn't feel right.
Feels kind of gross, right? Yeah,
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 right. So I made it up as I went. And I started my philosophy was I'll go as low as I can and still feel like I can, pay the bills and be happy. And I'll only decide to raise my rate when I just have too much business and I can't do anymore, would be true for any freelance artist, I think.
right,
Those who get paid top dollar are just too busy. Like I'm booked up for the next 3 months. If you want it that badly, it's got to be this. You know
right.
what I mean? And that's kind of what happened with me. I do have the advantage of building a team, which I've done. We've went from just me to right now we have 8. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about starting a new team in Atlanta. So if anyone from Atlanta is watching this, March next year, I'll be there looking for new team members. And we'll keep the Florida team too. So yeah, I have the advantage of duplicating myself. Um, but pricing, yeah. So pricing is just a charge by the hour, not by the shirt. If I charge by the shirt, I feel it might be problematic because then you're having to count shirts. Or if you're at an event and the people who approach the table, the guests of the event who approach the table, kind of take their time and they're not really approaching the table fast enough, then you still have to you still have to fulfill your obligation of painting whatever 100 shirts, let's say. Does that
Right.
mean you stay overtime? Does that mean you do them at home and ship them out? I didn't want that.
Mm-mm.
If I'm there, I'm getting paid by the hour. I tell the customers, I say, our artists are capable of painting a maximum of, could be different for everybody. For us, it's usually about 25 shirts per hour. And that will help them to determine how many artists they would need or how long they would need us there to fulfill, if there's 100 in the guest list and there's one artist, then we should probably be there for 4 hours. If you can only have 2 hours, then we'll need two artists. Figure it out that way. And then, of course, there's other things that might affect the price would be like the types of party favors. Hoodies are a lot more expensive than t-shirts, for example. Another factor would be how far is it from our base of operations? Do we have to fly there? Of course, there's going to be travel fees. Even if we have to drive several hours, there might be travel fees involved. So when someone asks like how much does it cost, I say that's a loaded question. I need more information.
Yeah,
People do that to you too, I'm sure.
always.
How much you charge for a painting? Like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
right. What do you
Yeah,
want? What are you using it for? When is it
yeah.
due?
So much things that go to it. Probably the simplest way to put it is like, well, it depends how much time I'm spending on it, because
Right.
eventually it all breaks down to time, right?
It does. And then, you know, I it's funny because I remember years ago, I I was charging, I don't know, it was 32, and I was in product development,
Hmm.
and I had an hourly rate, and it was at the time, it was okay for me. I was happy. It was like $35 an hour, but I had a ceiling, right? We talk about this thing, and I hadn't figured out how to break through it yet. And the story goes, from this one client, I got a call from them, and they need an illustration done, and I was up to here. I had no more give, and I said I can't, and it killed me to turn down work because I didn't want to let a client down. I didn't want money to go away, and I didn't want them to go find somebody else reliable, right? So I said and I kind of explained all of that, and I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I can't do it. No, okay. Well, they called me back a minute later. Listen, we really need you to do this. Like, we know you can do
Awesome.
this. It's got to get done. And I said, I, I and I worked with a lot of people in their company, and I said, if I do this and I drop the ball on others, it's not going to work for anybody. I can't do it. They called me back 10 minutes later. You have to do it. But I mean, it wasn't mean. It was like, it was pleading. Here I am at $35 an hour, and I'm like, all right, what's it worth to me? I said, give me a minute, and I figured it'd take about enough. It would be like a $1,500 job or something like that. And so I called back and I said, it's going to be $2,700. And they said, okay, great. And what? Okay, this is a different world now. So what I ended up doing is I just started to charge by the project, and I was no longer keeping track of time, other than if I wanted to figure out what was I actually making hourly. I was at a different level, and it changed my life. It changed everything.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great experience.
But it kind of sounds like what you're doing. I mean, I know you're hourly, but my suspicion is your hourly is outrageous. I mean, not outrageous. I guess your hourly, it fits the bill of entertainment. It's entertainment. It's not airbrushing in a mall.
Yeah.
And if somebody were to come up from a mall and go, "Would you do the party?" They might be a little bit more like, as opposed to a corporate event person who has a budget.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I hate to say it, but a lot more of my clients, it's actually good for us, but maybe bad for others. More of our clients are becoming colleges, corporate,
Yeah.
larger budgets, and less birthdays. It's not that we don't do birthdays, but our
Yeah.
prices have risen, especially with inflation.
Yeah.
But we're just so busy. Like it would actually hurt us to take a birthday party that lasted an hour,
Right.
so that, instead of doing this corporate event, because now we're out of artists. You know what I mean? I had to raise my rates
Yeah.
just to make that work. So
Because a
yeah, no,
birthday
I
event,
get it.
right? A birthday event, if you're going to go do that and it's an
Yeah,
hour, that means it's 3 hours, and that means it's
exactly.
more than 3 hours because of travel,
Yeah.
right? Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's just say that it's an afternoon, because,
Yeah.
or even a whole day if that artist could be flying somewhere else to do a corporate gig.
Right.
So, it knocks out some of my, I guess, resources
Right.
to make less money. Yeah, I'm not really proud of that. I would rather treat a birthday client like anybody else. It's not that we need that much money for an hour, but we just started running out of resources. And again, man, we've raised our rates twice this year just because of inflation. T-shirts,
Yeah.
flights are costing more, gas, everything. So um, it's changed a lot since I first started. So, but I started, like I said, I started as low as I could. My goal wasn't to charge the most; it was to fill up my calendar.
Yeah.
And now it's full.
So what
you
kind
know.
of hours would you say you work on an average week?
Oh, me personally,
Yeah.
60 hours, I would say,
Okay.
50 minimum. But it's very little of that is painting, to be honest.
Yeah.
If I do a busy week for me would be me personally painting 4 events, averaging 3 to 4 hours. That's not a lot of hours, but it's everything else that goes to set that up. the contracts, the emails. Some of these email threads go 50, 60 deep. They have
Yeah.
so many questions. Corporate events are complicated.
Right.
I have an assistant. We just hired a second one, and I'm still working on administrative work. Like, man, do we need a third assistant?
Yeah.
Um, and they, I wouldn't be able to do it without them anymore. I'm so reliant on them. They're, Heather, who's my rock star, does, she's full time,
Yeah.
just doing emails, scheduling. I still handle, anything that has to do with payments, um, contracts. There's all this stuff that goes ahead of it. So that's most of my work now. This is where I work. you know, I
So
love to travel though.
how
I
far
love
do you usually travel?
anywhere, but I think the farthest we've been so far would be Nevada.
Okay.
Going to be in Rio next week. I'll be in Wisconsin this weekend. But yeah, I enjoyed doing the brick and mortar. But there's a lot more freedom that comes with what I do. I say freedom. I work a lot, but I can play with my schedule more. When you're in a mall, at least my experience with the malls, you kind of have to be there to be profitable.
Yeah.
You could hire staff, but especially these days, it'd be really hard to make a profit, I think. This is coming from my own experience. For anyone out there who has a airbrush mall set up, then, it might be different for you, but that was my experience. So,
You
I
watched
can
the
plan
Pat,
my,
did you watch the Pat Gaines interview by any chance?
I did, I did. He and I are friends.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, we worked together a little bit doing some
Yeah.
events. And I've seen his interview with you and also a different one too. There was
Yeah.
someone else who's doing interviews.
I mean, he's
He's
got
got
a
a,
very an interesting model, and it's very
yeah,
specific to a very like he's got it kind of dialed in, and I think you got to find your thing, right? And I love that you found your thing.
yeah, me too. Because no, seriously, because for, a big part of my life, I really didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. It
Yeah.
was airbrush was there, but I lacked that focus or drive to, an endpoint. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's no secret to see why now I understand why he's so successful. I think it was in your interview with him that I learned that his parents were in retail, a fairly large store, and he watched and he learned, and it's
Yeah.
just part of his DNA now.
Yeah.
I say DNA, it's not really that. It's a part of his environment. He learned it
Right.
from a very young age, which is the best time to learn anything. It sticks with you,
Right.
Um, so yeah, he's mastered that field, when it comes to retail, does it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I took a lot of, like you, I watched or read those airbrush action magazines, and those are the articles I was drawn to.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Like, okay, how do you do this business thing? It wasn't about how do you paint a car. I mean, yeah, a little bit, but um, yeah, I was inspired by that, and I try to design my business. I think like maybe artists don't put enough emphasis on this. Again, my experience is that a lot of airbrush artists think it's okay if you make a mess because you're an artist.
Right.
When I go into the Ritz-Carlton, for example, I gotta have my game on. I gotta look presentable, not just the way I'm dressed, but the equipment needs to be clean, no overspray. Um, I just want to look like I belong there. That they're not going to look at me and say, "Oh my God, this guy's going to spill paint all over the carpets."
Right.
So, um, one of my biggest hurdles was to, design equipment that worked for my business and always looked presentable, stayed clean. It was uniform among the team, stuff like that. And Pat has that in spades. You go into a store, it's like, yeah, it belongs in Walmart.
Yeah.
Nothing cheesy about it. His easels look
When I
nice.
when I went into so I didn't know that was Pat's store at the Walmart on I Drive there, and we were staying there right in that area, and we had to run to Walmart to get some things.
Yeah.
And um, so my wife and son and I go in, and that's like one of the most heavily trafficked Walmarts in the world. And I'm not a big shopper to begin with, so I'm kind of like, and my wife knows that, and she loves to shop for our stuff. And she's like, "Look, you do your thing, and we'll meet back up." Great. And my son went with her, and then I saw this airbrush shop. I'm like, "What? That's
Yeah, that must have
crazy."
been fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I walk in, and I'm seeing all the stuff, and there's a guy airbrushing, and the smells come flooding back, and I'm like, "Wow, man, this is just amazing." And the guy who's airbrushing, he when you're airbrushing, you can sense when somebody comes in, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, "Hey, I've got your order." And he turned and he said, "Oh, this isn't your order. How can I help you?" And I said, "No, no, no, I'm good. I'm just looking around." I said, I'm this is my old life. Like, this was my life 20 years ago, and I'm taking it all in." And he says, "Oh, really? You were an airbrusher?" I said, "I was an airbrush." And he takes another good look at me, and he asks, "Do I know you?" And I said, "I don't think so. Do we?" And he said, "You look really familiar to me." And I said, "Chicago? Like, I'm from the Chicagoland area. I used to airbrush there a lot." And he said, "Germany. I know you from Germany." And I said,
What?
I said, "Really?" When I went to Badger Airbrush, we went to Toy Fair in Germany, and there was this guy in Germany who was there with his folks who opened up a restaurant, and he was an airbrusher, and he got in touch with Ken somehow from Badger, and he would come, and that's how we hadn't seen each other in
Wow.
about 18 years. It's like the world is crazy small,
It is.
crazy,
If you're
and
gonna meet in
airbrushing is
Germany,
even smaller, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So anyway, that
it's
story's
a good
not even
story.
there. I just thought it was a fun thing. Airbrushing has a way of bringing people together. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like you said, it's not really that large of a community.
right, right.
So to be the famous airbrusher in the industry, yeah,
Yeah,
like there's not that many people, you know,
yeah.
like
So let me ask you this. It sounds like you've found your business self,
I have.
and it sounds like you've been on quite a journey around that. And even though you have been in the business all of this time, right? And I think business is interesting because business and jobs and income are interesting because they're there to serve a purpose. They're there to help us live a life, and hopefully a standard of life that we're after, that pleases us, right? And I'm sure it varies given on the day or the week, because life is life, right? You could have a bajillion dollars and it can be irrelevant depending on what's going on in your life at the moment. Money
Mhm.
is a resource that can help make things easier, but it doesn't solve everything.
Right.
And yet, there's a certain standard that helps, and at some point you've got to figure out how to do it, and you've done that. So
Mhm.
what would be your advice to artists, particularly airbrush artists, who are just starting out, who want to make a living from their art?
Well, I think for me, it was okay and advantageous looking back to specialize. Like I said, I used to do all types of airbrush. Um, but when I started to specialize, that's when I got noticed. And I mean, lucky for me, I feel like I chose a niche that's not really well established, doing events, private events. And when I say events, just so to be clear with any other airbrush artists watching this, I'm not doing fairs or festivals. Nothing's retail. Everything's a contract. When someone hires me, I know what I'm getting paid. It's under contract. When the event's finished, it's one check, right? Not
You're a
retail.
jukebox. Money goes in and then you play, right?
Yeah, it's a good way
Yeah,
to look at it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my field. I'm more of like in the event industry than I am in the airbrush industry. Kind of I wish I could participate more in those Facebook groups or that type of stuff where people are always sharing their artwork. Um, I would like to be part of that, any group, to share and to interact with other artists. But, I'm always doing the same name designs over and over, so I can't feel like I can share my artwork. So that's why I'm super excited to be sharing what I do with you because it's very few opportunities for me to do that, except for my own social media accounts. So again, coming back, I think that for me, specializing was okay and actually awesome. And so if you're an airbrush artist and you realize you love doing cars and not so much shirts, then learn everything you can about cars. Become an expert. And we live in a day and age where finding information about something is accessible. Most of the time it's free, even if you have to pay for it. If it's in line with your goals, then it's definitely worth it. Do everything you can to become an expert. And then here's something else I've noticed. It's not always the best artist who makes the most money. And I don't think making the most money is the be all end all, but we're all, striving for success. We want nice things. I mean, let's be honest. We want an easy life. Um, so yeah, specialize. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry, marketing. That's it. Like, not always the best artist gets the most money. A lot of times, just getting known. And marketing may not be something you're passionate about. It's not really for me either, but I realize it's very important. And when I say marketing, I mean like social media primarily,
Which I think you're
networking.
very good at, particularly where I see you on Instagram. It's you've got a really nice active Instagram account.
Thank you. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Tammy Perkins is my social media manager. She does all my posts. She is my voice. I feed her obviously with all the media. We upload it to a drive in the cloud, and she just downloads what she wants. A lot of the stuff I put up there is not good. You know what I mean? It might be needs editing, or maybe it's just not good at all. She chooses what she feels like. We've been working together long enough. She knows me well enough to speak for me. Sometimes I make certain requests, like, "Hey, I want you to give props to this DJ or whatever at this event." Or whatever. I'll give her specific instructions, but the creative aspect of it is all her. So um, yeah, here's another tip, I guess. If you're an artist who wants to work on marketing, you can pay someone to do it. You don't have to do everything yourself. It may not be work with your budget in the beginning, but as your business expands, don't be afraid to spend money on your business.
Yeah.
It's just like investing. You get a return on your investment. So I spend as much as I can on my business and I take what's left, not the opposite. I don't buy things for myself. I keep a car that runs well. I have a decent home, but not the most expensive home I can afford. And everything else is business. I just want to grow, grow, grow. So more technical tip was that you don't always have to hire in the United States. I would rather have all my team, I have a marketing team, work from the United States simply because I'm supporting local business. But in the beginning, it was easier for me to go on a website called not Elance, but Upwork, where you can hire freelancers all around the world. So Tammy actually is an American living in Egypt, so she charges Egypt wages, a
Wow.
lot less expensive, right?
Yeah.
I had an Instagram manager from India. I had a video guy from also Egypt. Now the rest of my team is starting to morph into more United States based because I can afford it, but that helped me get off the ground. So yeah, spend, invest in your business. You don't have to do all the work. You can hire out and you can hire affordably and have some focus. Know where you're going. I mean, even if it isn't a plan you're absolutely sure of, make a plan
Yeah.
so that when you get up in the morning, you have a list of things to do and you check them off one by one. That sense of accomplishment by doing the small things every day adds up and it gives you the motivation to do the next thing.
Yeah, I love that. Make that your distraction, right? As opposed to social
Yeah,
media and being on your phone or whatever. If you have something else that you're committed to, that's going to help you grow further than just sitting on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good stuff, man. Thanks so
yeah.
much. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube. Just search Airbrush Events, and I'll pop up. We have a website, obviously, Airbrush Events. If you're in Florida and you're an airbrush artist, we're always hiring. And next year we'll be hiring in Atlanta.
That's awesome.
So you can just reach out to me, and we can get things started.
Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for being my guest. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, John. I had a good time.
Hey Pete, thanks again for being my guest. You're a great guest. You're a great interview, and I just really appreciate all the things you shared, and I appreciate having gotten to know you better as well since we actually recorded the interview. Uh, to summarize, some of the key points that I really want to leave you with, my audience, is that Pete started out just as a young guy with some interest and curiosity, and he approached this airbrush T-shirt expert, this craftsperson, and he took a chance and showed interest, and the person opened the door for him to walk in and to train him and to teach him, and it turned into a career, and that's an amazing thing. I I hear stories like that. And I don't know that people think about how amazing that is. Like the possibility of of going after something and somebody saying yes, saying I want to do that, I want to be that, and then going to someone, a professional, and they actually receive you and say yes. Now they could say no, but so what? You asked. You asked. You're not going to get, usually, if you don't ask. People can't read your minds, and you've got to go do it yourself. So if you're sitting there and you're waiting for that opportunity to come by, you got to be more engaged and go after it and present yourself before the opportunities, before they even show up, and then you're ready for the opportunity, okay? And so Pete did that. And he built this business, and the dude's a pro. And check out his social media, okay? The links are all down below in the description of the episode. And he talked about hiring a specialist, right, to market his business, and he's got some of the coolest, cleanest marketing I've seen for airbrushing. If you follow him, just check it out. Look how slick it is. It's really well done, and he's very personable. And he is who he is. Like that's how I know him. He's that guy, and so that's really really cool too. You don't want to build this false identity of who you are, and then people find out later that's not going to be good for your business. You want to be who you are, and you want to be a good person and easy to work with and a pro. And he designed this equipment to work specifically for his airbrush event business, something that is it breaks down, it's clean, it can go on an airplane, it can be transported easily. I mean, he's put a lot of time and energy into this over the last 10 years, and it's pro, and it looks for a really professional setup. All of his guys are wearing the same clothes. They've all got the same setup. Like it's just pro. Pro, clean, that's the brand. Really, really well done. And one of the last things that really stuck out for me with Pete was his advice to specialize, to laser focus and to specialize, to become an expert in something. Like you said, if you're going to be an airbrush artist and you like working on automobiles, focus on autos. Learn everything you can about cars, and you pick that lane, and it's going to explode for you. It's likely to, just like it did for him when he finally started to focus on this lane of entertainment. So really, really good stuff. So I hope that you can go ahead and just implement that, bring that in, ingest it, and bring it into your creative and professional workspace. And I really appreciate Pete as well talking about that episode, how I made $11,000 airbrushing T-shirts in a month, where I walk through my process, and I have the link for that episode down below, and I'm going to have the link for other episodes of airbrushing down below as well, because there's been great guests I've had on, and we talked a bit about Pat Gaines, and there's an episode I have where I interviewed Pat. And if you're interested in airbrushing, you're interested in business in that regard, check those people out. Okay, and those links below. And that's it. So I wish you the best, and hope that you're going to take that next step to make your creative aspirations and business a reality. Okay? All right. Go get them. On behalf of the Breakthrough Creative, I am John McDavitt. See you next time. Cheers.